Welcome back to another fantastic episode of I'm Going to Talk and You're Going to Listen. This is episode, I don't know, and just laying in my chair in the dark and the quiet with my cats. And, I was thinking of what to talk about. You know, I talk about a lot of stuff. I talk about crypto and prepping and homesteading and, you know, my book. You know, my newbie prepper book is up to 11 reviews now, which is great. You know, Amazon wouldn't port the reviews from Bunker Codes over to Bunker Basics, even though it was a simple rebranding. And they were like, well, if you hadn't changed the name, we would have moved them over. I'm like, well, if I hadn't changed the name, it wouldn't be a rebranding. So whatever. It also makes me wonder if those other books, this isn't going to be a whole episode of me bitching about other people's books, but it does make me wonder if people are occupying the top 100 by simply porting their reviews from book to book to book until they occupy it 2 or 3 or 4 times, 5 times in some cases. Because they're the same authors and the same topic and nearly exactly the same name with just tons of book title, just tons of reviews. So I don't know. Trying to keep the microphone kind of relatively here. Anyway, there's so many things to talk about. You've got you know, the drone thing coming up. If you haven't got a drone, I'd get one. The DJIs, the entry-level DJIs are super affordable. They're an absolute blast. I don't have fun doing like hardly anything anymore, and I haven't for a long time. I think by and large I've been pretty much dead inside. Just from the burnout. And flying a drone is pretty stinking fun, and I would take that with like pretty high regard. I would say the 3D printer is like super fun too. The drone is like super fun. Radios, I find radios really fun. I'm a little too tired to mess with radios right now, but you know, tech stuff is fun, and it's just not very often, you know, the really fun tech stuff comes out. I remember the very first drones, you know, they were thousands of dollars, and to be able to get, you know, a perfectly capable drone, multiple batteries, and a controller for under a couple $100 is just amazing. And then one of the things, my wife got us a couple burner phones, and you know, you have to set up the drone for the first time with a phone with a real SIM card, but then after that, you know, you can use a burner phone that doesn't even have a, you know, a cell tower connection. As long as it has Wi-Fi, you can use your drone and stuff. And that's been a lot of fun, just being able to, you know, take the drone out, just fly the drone whenever I want, without having to mess with the other phone. And I almost think sort of like, you know, modern defensive stuff, you know, armor, you know, pistols, rifles, you know, food, bandages, you know, I think, and radios, like you should have, you know, I think in my opinion, a drone for each person in the house. And obviously SHTF Tactical Drone Manual by Don Shift. That should be a mandatory book if you get a drone. But I talk about drones a lot. I don't know. Do I talk about crypto a lot? Crypto's in pretty much free fall right now. Because the currency is devaluing, and people are just emptying out of the markets. I still have money in crypto. Mine's doing okay because I moved it all out of the bad ones. So my crypto is fine. I'm really happy with where it's at. But I know there's just billions, billions and billions of dollars leaving the crypto market every day. So I'm sure some people aren't happy about that. Food prices are going through the roof. Tell me something I don't know. One of the new scams, every single one of my friends said they each got a note saying their property value is going up because they made improvements. Well, most of them haven't, including me. I mean, we just have the garden outside and like an orchard. It's no improvements. They're not worth anything. It takes thousands of dollars to rezone it into agriculture. So I didn't make any improvements. It's just a scam to just keep taxing everybody. And I got a temporary promotion that I've just been working my ass off to try to get for years. And it was the equivalent of, I think, a couple dollars an hour. For all intents and purposes, it's basically nothing. It's like statistically, maybe another tank of gas or something. So to just be like, to have just, busted my ass for years and years and years and years, and to kind of get a taste of this, this temporary promotion, and it wouldn't even really pay for another trip to the grocery store, was kind of disappointing. And I thought it was going to be more than that. And I think there's a couple of reasons why it's not more than that. I think there's just there's a lot of artificial constraints on compensation and retention. And I'm not an eat the rich kind of guy. So please, take this with understanding. I really don't give a shit that there's rich people at all. I don't care even if they're billionaires or trillionaires. I don't care at all. I think where the frustration is that even within the constructs of the current systems, where they could pay you more, they simply don't. And I'm not talking about McDonald's workers. I mean, like, when you have a pay scale range and they just don't want to pay you for, further into the pay scale range for some reason, because they want you to have, somewhere to grow. And I was looking at other jobs, and other jobs would actually have, for the same work, would have started me out even lower. And it's crazy to me how truly the only way to get ahead is to just have a lower interest rate. Well, and curb your debts, including your vehicles. Or you've got to get a second, third, fourth, fifth income. I know I talk about this stuff a lot. It's probably boring hearing the same things, but sometimes my brain puts it all together in a different way, and I feel like maybe I'm just getting better at making the points better. But vehicles have come down, but new vehicles are still, top trim models that are just super bloat. Super bloat. So you're still looking at, the last good vehicles, were maybe made in 2015 or 2016, and there just hasn't been any good vehicles made since then. Everything after that's just been bloat, as the vehicle manufacturers pad their profits by adding e-waste into their vehicles, and people I think are too quick to say, oh, it's their profit margins, this and that and this and that. It's like, there's a lot of bloat, there's health insurance, there's the union dues, there's a lot of bloat. They could pay everybody, they won't, but they could pay everybody so much more if they didn't have insane medical overhead. And most people will never use that health insurance or car insurance for that matter. You're subsidizing everybody else, and they just let car insurance and they just let health insurance get away with it, and they let illegals drive around like absolute maniacs, and having the illegals around just doubles or triples everybody else's car insurance, and our taxes keep going up and up and up and up and up, and it's really not sustainable. Like, there's 3, 4, 5 houses for sale. They've been for sale for months and months, and they're just not moving because everybody's just flat stinking broke. And they keep trying to force everybody back to the office to subsidize the cities, but the cities are emptying out of jobs. Unemployment. I did kind of a little bit of a short sort of video. Unemployment's just insane. The job numbers are fake. The job numbers are going to get corrected. They're all speculative job postings, right? They're speculative, with companies believing that things are going to get better when they're not. In December's usually a fake month anyway. And, January, everything is just going to crash again. And we have another Fed call. I was going to talk to my wife about this earlier, but I forgot. The Fed call is coming up. They're probably going to lower it by another 1/4 of a point. Or they may just lie and say, oh, we're still in the fog. We don't know. Oh, we don't know. Oh, could be anything. But really, I've talked to the AI about this a lot. And the Fed, they look at such like a macro level with like such a wide angle lens that things have to be bad for so damn long. And there's just a massive disconnect with bringing down home mortgage rates. Like, they really there needs to be like a 2 to 3, maybe even a 4-year crash sometimes before they really bleed everybody dry enough to lower interest rates. And what they're doing is, this is going to sound cruel, but I don't mean it to be. They're like leeches, bleeding the system dry, and then kind of like rebuilding the system over and over and over again. The problem is, every single time that happens, everybody who survives gets exponentially more powerful. If we could refinance at half the rate we are now, it would be like I suddenly had an extra paycheck. It's that much. It's that much of a difference. So when I'm buying things, when I'm buying tech, or when I'm buying goodies or ammo or bandages or groceries, or, I'm competing with people who were able to survive multiple crashes and have gotten exponentially more, not rich, but stabilized through every crash. Meanwhile, everybody else, if they're not able to recover after the next crash, they are just losing over and over and over, and they lose worse and worse and worse until they're effectively out of resources. And you have people on Snap and Wick, I think that's the name of one, and then Oregon Trail, like all these food cards, and you have people on medical cards, pharmacy cards and stuff, trying to figure out their way through this. People on disability, and I mean, people trying to sue each other, and people trying to mooch off each other and scam off each other. Just as deplorable as some of those things are, everyone's trying to figure out how to survive. And I made the argument the other night, I think, that homeless are probably better survivors than most people, but the reality is that homeless heavily rely on charity. So if we're all poor enough, charity ceases to exist, and people are really struggling. And I think people have expectations that they're going to make knickknacks and they're going to go sell knickknacks and it's going to work, and it's not. We went to a little knickknack selling thing, and there was people there a little bit younger than us. They wouldn't even look at us in the eyes. They wouldn't even get off their phones and acknowledge us. And we went over to their booth. My wife tried to even say, a nice thing to them. And what she said was really nice. And, I think, it told them, it kind of shared something with them. Just kind of, I don't know how to say it. She said something nice to them. I thought it was nice. It was divulging maybe a little too much, but it was a nice thing to say. She was, I think, if you're going to be a little vulnerable, those are kind of calculated risks. They didn't even look up to her. They didn't even look up and acknowledge that she was there. And, for that to happen to my wife, it's obviously very, very hurtful. And I said, I wouldn't have said anything to those people, because they could have been grifters. They could have made all that stuff just to be grifting. And she said, they're probably just hurting really bad, and they're just in the wrong spot, and they're just so discouraged that they can't even look up at people anymore. And we walked by them, and we started talking to some other people, and they both just got up and walked out. Maybe it wasn't even their booth. Maybe they were just booth sitting for somebody. I don't know, but they just so if that's the case, then they're just screwing over their buddy, I guess, right? But she sat down and immediately got down on her phone too. So even if we wanted to buy these things, it's just, people are just really hurting right now. Whereas I went there, and the first gal, we don't even have a booth there, and the first gal started asking me about my book. I was just like, oh, you guys are killing me. Why didn't I bring... I have old copies of my book, but I don't have new copies. I don't keep new copies of my books in the car. I'm just like, oh, I should have brought in a copy of my book. Dang it. So, that was funny. But, my wife, I need to get a Connex so I can move my stuff out of the garage, so my wife can have the garage as her workshop, which is what I always promised her. Her workshop's in there, but it has to have a certain aura for her to feel the vibe, and I totally get that, because I was the same way when I was doing my last project. I had to have if I'm going to actually create real art, I have to have the right ambiance. So I get it, and I promised her I'm going to get a Connex and move everything out and move the shed and have the new woodshed stuff. There's a couple other things I want to get first, though. I want to take care of some house stuff, but the Connex is definitely next. Although we also need a 4x4. It's just rough, you know. Like, I'm sure some people are like, oh, well, at least you even have, a path forward. And that's true. I get it. But the thing is, like, if you're just like stagnated, you have to be making progress or you're going to slide off a cliff. And that's the problem. If I'm absolutely working myself past the point of burnout, I had a doctor thing, and then I still got on and worked half the night, and then I started this morning only to just immediately be undermined by a coworker, and then this afternoon I got undermined by another coworker, and it's just like, you guys, I am busting my ass more than you can even comprehend, still to only financially be treading water. And that's the problem when you're in a business for other people and not yourself, is there's no meritocracy. Your work does not equate to more pay. As my song called Burnout says. It's just, I know, I guess I just keep saying this. I really want my book thing to work out. And honestly, if everybody else would even give 1/100th of a shit as I did, I could probably have 100 reviews on my book. And I'm happy for 11. I'm blessed. But there's no reason I can't have like 50 to 75 by now if people would just give a shit. Part 1. Part 2, I think Amazon is just not posting my reviews. Several people have said they've posted reviews, and I have seen it take up to 5 weeks to post a review. But also there's people that just, and it happened to another person, I asked him to check my book out, and he goes, yeah, I checked your book out. It looked exactly like how you described it. And I'm like, well, fuck you, you fucking dick. How are people just such pieces of shit? Why even exist? What the fuck do you think you're adding to the universe by saying things like that? I just want to say, fuck you, dude. But then everyone will say that I'm the bad guy. But it's like, no, seriously. How about commit to helping me out? How about that? And I know as a creator, you're not supposed to be resentful. But I think there's so many fake grifter fakes out there that want you to give a shit about their stupid opinions so bad, and their stupid characteristics and mannerisms. And it's like, I'm literally asking for one thing. I just need you to grab a copy of my book and review it. That is all I need for you to do. It would help me out so much. Like, if you could potentially change somebody's life. Like, we saw a gal there, and she had some bars of soap, and me and her talked and talked and talked and talked and talked. And I really wanted a bar of soap. Because she seemed cool, but also because her bars of soap smelled good, and they were really, really cool names, and it kind of reminded me of my childhood a little bit. We were talking for a long time, and she said she's moving to Idaho, but she couldn't. I think they already had a place in Idaho, she said, and they already had a place. They had a place here, and they were trying to sell the place here to move to Idaho. And she's like, there was just literally nobody to buy the house here. So, it'd be like effectively just sitting, on an empty house that they can't sell. And that's kind of like the reality. And so, I could have been mean to her, I guess, like I'm mean to people online, and be like, oh, you're a coward for leaving. But she's also, she said she'd just been completely, taxed out of existence. And that's what Washington's doing in Oregon. They're just taxing everybody to the point of like, financial ruin. They've passed that threshold of just straight up ruining everybody. And a lot of people have said the answer is to just stop paying taxes. And I hate taxes and taxation's theft. But I think the problem is there isn't enough people to just stop paying taxes yet. Like, unemployment's not high enough. And Antifa knows this better than anybody. All they do is they just stop paying everything, and then they form an army up around the house and just say, come and take it. And then they force negotiations with whoever owns the house. They have done that before. I could show you news stories. So, whereas conservatives just kind of hum and haw and, get ran over. Same thing with like flock cameras. So there's flock cameras everywhere, illegally tracking all this data. Well, nothing came of it until the left got pissed off that they were using flock cameras to track down illegals. And then all of a sudden, these flock cameras are a problem, and all of a sudden they start getting pulled. The left has infinitely more power, money, finances, coordination, and motivation to push whatever bills through they want, whatever laws. They'll sit there and bitch, piss, and moan about the Constitution while taking away your gun rights. It's insane. And conservatives can't, you can't even get them to go vote, let alone getting candidates that aren't controlled opposition. Oh, voting doesn't matter. Oh, my votes will just, the vote will just get stolen. It's just excuse after excuse. Then you have like 40+% of conservatives that just refuse to vote. It's like, no, we didn't win because you didn't vote and there wasn't a serious candidate. Because, 40+% of conservatives just do not even want to participate in voting anymore. And I don't want to say they're disenfranchised. They're just fucking lazy. Like, it's always been a problem. Democracy is mob rule. But you can't just not vote, because it allows them to just move their pieces around you and work you in a corner. You have to vote. You have to have strong leadership, and you have to defend that strong leadership. And the problem is, there's no, I can't remember if it was P&W, Guerrilla, or who it was, but conservatives are just calling out for strong leaders, people who don't support Israel, people who don't support all the BLM, woke ideology, DEI, abortion, trans kids, Ukraine, all that shit. Just people who are pro-American. No H-1Bs, no Chinese students, no Somalis, just Americans. Everybody else, go back to their country. We'll get our houses back. We'll get our jobs back. America first. And I'm so sick of the boomers. They just want to work and be left alone. Great, they can go work and be left alone in their own country. Oh, they just want to praise their XYZ in peace. Good, they can go do that in their own country. Like, we need to rebuild and become a prosperous nation again. And we're not going to do that when the only thing we export anymore is AI and NVIDIA stock. Like, I believe our country could become an amazing, AI nation. We just got to get the nuclear cores set up and fix some cooling problems with the data centers. We could do that. America is awesome. We could do it. But excuse me, this whole thought that Musk, no one will have to work anymore because everyone will have robots. The problem is, I was talking to somebody about this, I think in Mark's chat. People say, robots won't complain about pay. They won't this, they won't that, they won't strike, they don't get hungry. Let me tell you about how robots actually work. They don't ask for more pay, but their subscription fees are going to go up forever. And if you don't have nuke cores, their power prices are going to go up forever. Their batteries are going to go bad. You're going to be replacing their batteries forever. You're going to be replacing their servos. Even if they're brushless robots, with brushless motors, you're still going to be, until there's another battery breakthrough. Salt batteries are still pretty heavy. So robots are not going to usher in like a new utopia of nobody that has to work anymore. I'm sure some people, will have a robot walking a bunch of dogs, and that robot walking the dogs makes money for them. Until, somebody abducts your robot and holds your robot ransom or something. Like, you can have robot dogs, and those robot dogs could defend somebody's subdivision, and you could charge them, like, in that route, those people might not have to work. But it's not like I can have a robot do my job and then I don't have to work anymore. No, what'll just happen is a robot will replace my job, and that robot will work directly for the corporation, and that's how it works. People are just so naive and stupid. It's like, I could have my robot get my groceries for me. Okay, but there's going to be no way that you could afford that robot's subscription. Do you think people are going to actually let you buy the robot outright? They're going to make it so hellaciously expensive that you have to have a subscription. Even if you don't have a subscription, you're going to need to pay for upgrades, and there's going to be planned obsolescence, just like phones, and there's going to be right to repair problems. You're not going to have any right to repair your own robot. Like, it's the same trap with phones, it's the same trap with computers and drones and stuff. Like, you can't repair these things. You can still repair some of your like Nintendo stuff. So like, maybe if you get a robot from Japan, maybe you could repair it. But do you think you're gonna repair a robot from China? Like, do you know how much e-waste just from those stupid ass scooters? Like, China had football fields and football fields full of them, and a lot of those companies, even in America, have already folded, and so there's just derelict scooters everywhere. It's going to be the same with robots, because if you can't afford it, and this is what I asked a guy on Mark's chat, I said, what happens with this robot if you can't afford it anymore? Is it going to just take some of your shit and leave as collateral? Like, it's going to be a credit card, so they just like deduct the money from your bank account? Or what if it's like a gym membership where it doesn't let you cancel, it just keeps billing you? Or it just has access to your internet, forever, and just finds ways to bill you, forever. I think robots are cool. I think having robots would be cool. I especially think like robot dogs are like a great idea. People think that shit's crazy, but people have had robot vacuum cleaners, robot pool cleaners, and robot lawnmowers. All that has become mainstream. There's no reason why. I think the most affordable robot dog is only like a few $1,000s, you better believe that within a couple of years there's going to be robot dogs for like 600. They're going to be more affordable than computers, than a decent computer. They're going to come down just like drones. There's no reason they wouldn't. I mean, China just makes shit like so cheap. Then there's going to be some protectionism thing where some congressman's getting their dick sucked by some fucking corporate whore from some company that bans the other company, and then that shit gets taken away. But there's always like a little bit of a window there. I think it's the same thing with like Starlink. It's like everyone thinks Starlink's so fucking awesome. What happens, when Musk decides he doesn't like what you say, Musk doesn't like what you tweet, and then gets rid of your Starlink. You think they can't do that? Amazon's been doing that shit for years. You think Musk won't do that? It's just like, and people say, well, do you think DJI is just going to shut everything off? Like, no, I think DJI wants us to keep those drones on. I think if anything, we're going to get geofenced, and we're going to have to use like VPNs. But that's why I have a burner phone. Wow. That's why I have a burner phone hooked up to my drone now. So, I guess I wanted to close out by saying, oh, yeah, okay, we still got a little time. Wow. I want to close up by saying this. I've tried to be a leader before, and I turn into something that I don't like. But the world also needs people like that. It's just hard for me to embrace being a leader. It's really hard, but I'm a leader. I'm officially a lead at work now, and just being constantly undermined. And being a leader means you're not going to make friends. It means you've got to toughen up a little bit. It means people aren't going to like what you have to say, and it means people are going to be undermining you like crazy, trying to make you slip up, trying to make you say things, trying to make you do things, trying to work you into corners, and all for what I take into account is not a lot of compensation. And there's still so many politics, and the deck is stacked so far against you that, like, by the time you're going into the room, there are already five moves ahead of you, and you've got to be 10 moves ahead of them, and you've got to be amazingly good at navigating their bullshit. You got to be even better at them at navigating bullshit. And I've been taking tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of training to prep myself for being a tech lead, leaving the business analyst role and going into the tech lead role. And I don't talk what I do a lot. Because I think a lot of people don't understand it, and then they assume I'm rich. And they don't realize I'm eating rice and beans just like everybody else. Because of, massive inflation and massive interest rates, and houses having, quadrupled, living in a 1980s house that's barely worth anything. This 4 times its value of what you could buy one for brand new. I mean, the people that allowed that in the banks should have the no things happen. That's just, it's pure greed. This is not, I always told myself I didn't want to live in a house like this. It has a certain kind of crazy charm to it, though. I want to live in a real house, and we paid. You know, I brought it up too many times. We really got scammed. We got scammed really bad. This should have been um, a USDA loan, and we got scammed. And then the lender bled us dry for every single penny we had just to barely move into this place, and didn't get to fix a single thing, and we've been basically flat broke ever since. And so I talk to other people that are in tech, but I also talk to a lot of people who are blue collar. Most of them are repair people. They do just absolutely amazing things with their hands. Stuff that I could never do. Like, I watch, Hudson Valley tile, and I'm just like, that's amazing. Watching someone put up a bathroom like the right way and have it just be like amazing, and know that bathroom's going to last like 30 years. What I do isn't better than those people. I don't think that. Somebody who knows how to rebuild, windows, rebuild doors, I don't think I'm better than those people at all. And I think it's frustrating to me that I have to feel guilty about being proud of what I do when I don't actually make that much. But I remember I used to go into the video game store, with other, video game nerds, where you're supposed to feel wanted. And, I knew I made more money than all of them put together. Because I know the game store owner wasn't paying them that much. And so a lot of the money that they made there was making money on the side, doing their own deals. It wasn't nearly as bad as what used to go on at Game Crazy, where people used to just straight up eBay all the games. But I know some of the nerds, made their own Pokemon card deals and stuff in the store to flip Pokemon cards and stuff. Or if the store didn't have enough money to buy the games, the people would buy the games themselves. Sometimes I would hang out at the store and let him buy stuff, and I would buy it at just a little bit of a markup. That way he made a little bit of money, and then I still got stuff at just like crazy deals. And all those kids ever did, was shit talk people who went to college and got their degree and how much smarter they were. And I'm standing like 5 feet away, but because I looked exactly like them, because I wear just the rattiest clothes imaginable, like 10-year-old, 15-year-old clothes, just like falling apart at the threads, like just nobody thinks anything of it. And I just sat there and just listened to them basically shit talking me, but not, them obviously not knowing that they were shit talking me, and I was just looking through the games like I like to do. And I felt bad for them, because they're going to be scrimping and scramping for scraps like forever. One of them had to work part-time at Walmart, because I saw him over at the Walmart, and then he'd work part-time at the game store. And then he was so happy that he finally, I think, got a job at Verizon or something. And it's just, well, I mean, at least at Verizon, there may be a little bit of meritocracy where he could have made more money, but I was just thinking, like, these poor kids are going to be, stuck living in their parents' basements their whole lives. They're going to have no idea that there's a whole world out there, but they're also kind of happy with, where they're at, and they're happy with their little game store. But I'll tell you what happened. The game store guy got sick, and his fucking cunt rag of a wife and his stupid bitch of a mom took over, and they fucked that place up. And even though I helped him, I know I've told you guys this story so many times, but even though I basically was the only guy helping this guy watch his store for most of Christmas, his wife 100% knew me. She'd seen me in there a million times. She knew I was an author. She knew I wrote books. I dropped my books off there to sell them. He said I could put the kiosk in and everything. And then the second he was in the hospital, those two bitches took the store over. Said they didn't even know me and they stole my books. And it just about broke me, because it just showed me that, like, you can have just the utmost tolerance, even of the people in your own culture. You can stand up for them. You can do tons of free work. You can, buy their stuff. You can, trade stuff to them. You could make them, hundreds. You could make them thousands of dollars. And with just like the flick of a wrist, he was having a foot problem. And that was it. And I called him and I emailed him and I Facebooked him, and it just didn't matter, because I think they took his phone and I think they took over his socials. And he stole my book, or not he, his mom and his wife stole my books, and they acted like they didn't even know me. The last thing she said to me as they walked me out of the store, which was also just extremely rude, the last thing she said to me was, "Why isn't your mask pulled up over your nose?" And I looked at her and I'm like, "Are you serious?" This was during the Rona. I'm like, "Are you serious? Like, are you guys?" And the look in her eyes was like she just, like, did not recognize me. And it's just like, do I pull my mask down and, like, remind them who I am? Or are they gonna be like, do they think they're gonna die from the Rona? Like, I pulled my mask down. I'm like, I've been in here every day for months helping your son and your husband. I don't know who you are. We're not buying any books right now. I'm like, my books are already behind your counter. I had actually come in there to set up my little kiosk for them. I made a little map. In fact, shout outs to those of you who own the art book. You actually have the art is actually in that art book for my mat that I made, which was a map, a really cool map. And it also, what you don't see on there is it actually has all the had all the books at the time. It was so cool. I worked so stinking hard on it. And I think that's seriously going to be, like, in the top 10 most, like, offensive things that have ever happened to me in my entire life. Embarrassing, offensive things. And then it wasn't, too long after that. I think it was that next year. That we left. And I made that place a shitload of money. And I stood by that place in freezing fucking cold winter and helped him run that store with just the two of us. And I didn't ask for a dime. And there was a homeless dude freezing his ass off with a broken bicycle. I paid him, I gave him $20 to go to the Home Depot to buy the pieces that he needed so he could go repair his bicycle. I knew who he was, but he didn't know who I was because I had seen him at one of the other stores. so he could fix his bicycle and get home. It was like fucking freezing. This was in the middle of December. It was literally freezing, and I gave him $20 to go repair his bike. And I watched his bike because it, so nobody would steal his bike. I waited out there in the cold for like an hour for him to get back and start working on his bicycle. And for that fucking cunt, and then they walked me out of the store. And then people didn't know. And then people started coming to the store and asked for my book, and they said they had no idea what they were talking about. And it was, my point to all this is there is really two kinds of people in the world, but they're not people with money and people without money, and they're not people that are blue collar, versus people that are white collar. They're not rich people versus poor people. It's just people with integrity versus people without integrity. And what you realize online, and I tell people this a lot, and they don't get it, and I forget it a lot myself too. Most people online that you meet online, that you talk to online, are fucking pieces of shit that do not have anything better to do. And I hate to say that. No, there's some good ones. Of course there's some good ones, but a lot of them are good ones. A lot of them are pieces of shit that don't have anything better to do. And nobody ever stops and asks themselves, why isn't this person doing something else? Sometimes they have valid reasons. Most of the time they don't. Most of the time they're pieces of shit. And I've got to remind myself constantly, because I constantly forget that people are pieces of shit. And also, just because someone owns a business doesn't mean, they might be a stand-up person, but their family could just be big pieces of shit. I met his dad too. I met like his dad and his brother, and I was hoping that his dad was going to be there because I knew his dad would remember me and set the whole thing straight. But I went there a couple times and just I couldn't sync up with his dad. It's just amazing. And I think like a lot of people were just leeching. I think like a lot of people were leeching off him. A lot of his family, a lot of his friends, a lot of his coworkers were all just leeching off him. And the second he was out of the picture, they just took it over, like literally like an invasive trailer trash species of cokeheads. And it's amazing to me, I guess, how people don't give a shit. They only care about their own nest egg, and realize she had no business acumen at all. His wife, certainly his mom, was a fucking stoned out Woodstock hippie, and his wife was just fucking the absolute epitome of trash. Like if you looked up trailer trash, fucking white trash, cokehead, crackhead, meth head, like she's there. She's the picture. They did not know how to run a business, any kind of business at all, let alone, a video game business. And you just realize there's two different types of people. There's types of people with integrity, and there's types of people without integrity. And I don't know whatever happened to him, and I never looked back at the website to see if he made it back in. But he's had my contact email. He's had my phone number. He used to call me. And after he got sick, I don't know what happened to him, but or I don't know if they lied to him and told him something, but it's just like finding people to collaborate with is so stinking hard. Finding trustworthy people with integrity is so hard. And also, I'll say this, just because people have a YouTube channel, just because you've seen their face, people can put on a facade for a long time. And some of the worst fucking people in the world have YouTube channels. And some of them have hundreds of thousands of followers, and they're just the fucking worst people, and they've got other people fooled. They might even say some things that are right, sometimes. But unfortunately, they get some of the wrong, they fool some of the wrong people. And then those people steer well-meaning people to these shitbag channels that sound really good. But, the guys used to talk about like psyops for a while, and people that are more or less like fed tubers. Fed tubers. There are still a lot of them out there. And you can tell, I always tell people this, you can tell because they've got fucking hundreds of thousands of subscribers, and they have like financial backing that they shouldn't have, and they have sponsorships that they shouldn't have, and they're filming in places that they shouldn't be, and they haven't been bought out by private equity firms, and their merch is in just a little too many places, and they act like they're breaking news, even though they're just stealing the news from just literally that day's news. But because they sound all cool and edgy with their cool voice, I'm breaking news. You're not fucking breaking news. You just have 200,000 people, and you're just restating the news that you just read and acting like it's fucking more serious than it actually is, just for the engagement bait. There's no synthesis, there's no analysis, there's no extra information they have. They're just reading off a fucking thing. And then you got these AI slop videos that are even just more insane. Oh, and I guess this is just me complaining for an hour that I really wish we could all support each other a little better. And it's not to any of you guys. I'm not complaining to any of you guys. It's all the other people that I talk to that just nothing but platitudes. And it's like, there's a YouTuber that I think I told you guys about this already. I keep trying to get a hold of him. I think he's having a health thing right now. And I just want him to check my book out. I'm like, I'll literally drop ship you a copy, dude. Like, can you check my book out? Like, I really need help. Like, I genuinely believe in my bunker book. And the only way I'm going to get the word out is if I keep bugging people. And I'm making slow progress, but it's at least progress, if that makes sense. I feel like I'm making progress. And I guess I'll close with this, I'm making a little progress at work, and I'm making a little progress with my side business, my books. And you know what? Like, that's good. I gotta just keep trying. So, don't give up, I guess. I know it's easier said than done, but things are gonna get a lot harder. And I would say just keep looking for little side gigs. Keep looking for little things to make. Keep looking for little niches to squeeze into. That's what I would do. Everybody keeps, keep trying, keep finding your little thing, keep finding your spin. Keep finding your spin that you can put on things. Even if it's fishing or even if it's your car, Don't just do YouTube. You got to spread out from there, but maybe even if making AI slop is your thing or homesteading is your thing, whatever, just don't give up. Don't give up. And keep praying and something will come to you. With AI now, I feel like you can just keep talking to an AI over and over again. And eventually, you and the AI might come up with an idea. You never know. You never know. I guess I'll close with this. There's a lot of great channels that talk about side gigs. Even if you think your job's going okay, I would get into a side gig and making something, or writing or painting, or molding something, or repairing something. Use AI while you've got it to help build your moat. That's all I can say. I don't know. And subscribe, and check out my books. And there's still time to prep, so get your rice and beans and learn how to do food saver stuff. And there's still time. Join a church and get right with God and have him lead the way. If all else fails, have him lead the way. He usually will guide you to what he wants you to be doing. So just hang in there. Obviously, don't get taken advantage of. But yeah, if you've stayed this long, I appreciate you. And I'm gonna put my bunker book on sale next week, and I hope if anyone's sitting on the fence, I know people are struggling financially. I hope they'll grab one. And I want to try to leave a super chat on Marf next week to try to remind everybody too. But leaving a review on Amazon only takes a minute and helps me out a ton. So if you haven't done it, please check it out. And I really appreciate y'all, and talk to y'all later. Bye.